For most of Commander's history, mono white was considered the weakest color in the format, and that was largely due to the color pie. Historically, white's major strength has always been removal, able to deal with basically any permanent type better than any other color. Think cards like Swords to Plowshares, board wipes like Austere Command, and more recently, Farewell. And white also traditionally has been very good at low to the ground, go wide aggro strategies called white weenie. And these type of aggro decks would be pretty prevalent in 1v1 formats. All colors are meant to have different strengths and weaknesses though, and in the case of white, one of its major weaknesses was supposed to be card draw, and to a lesser extent ramp as well, though white has had access to catch-up ramp for a very long time, just not a lot of cards that do this. Now this works just fine in 1v1 formats. Card draw and ramp are just not that important in aggro strategies like white weenies, and if a white deck wants to pair its powerful removal spells with a slower late game strategy that requires like card draw or ramp, then it could just splash into other colors. It's totally fine. But in Commander, a format that revolves heavily around the concepts of card advantage and mana advantage, way more than any 1v1 format does, a color that is designed to be weak at card draw and ramp is going to be at a serious disadvantage. Especially because Commander, unlike other formats, has the color identity rules, so that means a mono white deck, by definition, cannot just splash blue for some card draw, for example. I've been playing Commander regularly since 2011, I know, a very, very long time at this point. And from my own experience, playing mono white was essentially playing Commander on hard mode, basically. It was extremely common to see in the 2010s mono white decks running basically any halfway decent mana rock in their deck so they can ramp out premium card draw options like Mind's Eye. Yes, Mind's Eye, I swear to you, was premium card draw back then for mono white decks. Keep in mind though, this is the exact same time period that your average green deck will be doing typical green land ramp things with premium spells like Nature's Lore and 3 Visits, and then refilling their entire hand and then some with a single spell like Garruk Primal Hunter and Hunter's Insight. Now that's not to say that mono white had zero card draw options at the time. Mentor the Meek, I believe, was printed in like 2011, so the entire time that I've been playing Commander at least. Mask of Memory is an equipment that I love to this very day. I still run it in my equipment deck, for example. And savvy players understood the power of lane tax as card advantage all by itself, and then it could basically act as straight up card draw when you pair it with Scroll Rack and just exchange all those basic lanes you're drawing off lane tax with other non-lane cards. But at the end of the day, with all this tech and everything, it was still harder to draw cards in mono white, and also the ramp wasn't that good either. Now, as the primary method of playing Magic shifted from 1v1 formats over to Commander in, let's say, the late 2010s, the growing Commander community started loudly complaining and just memeing a lot about how bad white is in Commander due to the lack of good card draw and to a lesser extent the ramp. And WotC adapted to the feedback, slowly rolling out awesome new card draw and ramp options around the 2020s, and we're still getting them to this day. For ramp, we've got Smothering Tithe, Deep Gnome Terramancer, and way more catch-up ramp options like Archaeomancer's Map, which is absurdly good, Sand Scout, Claim Jumper, all of these are top-tier catch-up ramp options. And for card draw options, we've got numerous draw engines like Welcoming Vampire, Enduring Innocence, Benny Brax, Caretaker's Talents, and the absurdly busted Trouble in Pairs. And after a couple of years of these cards slowly rolling out and entering the format, I've seen basically all the complaints about white and Commander just vanish. I haven't heard a peep about people complaining about white for at least a year, probably longer than that. So the question is, what is now the weakest color in Commander? And obviously, as the title suggests, I believe it is mono red. Now, I'm not saying that mono red is unplayable in Commander, obviously not. I have multiple mono red decks myself, but the color has some fundamental issues that can be a problem to play it in casual Commander, at least if you're sticking to monocolor. That's another thing I want to highlight, by the way. When I talk about issues with mono red in casual Commander, I mean casual Commander, like brackets 1 to 3, for example, not high-powered and definitely not CEDH. At high-power tables, where only a fraction of Commander's vast card pool is even playable, and games end around turn 5 or so latest, red looks actually really good. Its top cards like Underworld Breach and Deflecting Swat definitely make up a big chunk of the meta, and we even see mono-red CEDH decks like Godo and Magda show up in tournaments. And that's because mono-red's greatest strengths lie in its explosive potential. Underworld Breach is one of red's strongest cards, one of the strongest recursion cards in the entire format even, but it's only truly powerful if you can chain multiple spells in a single turn, and you usually have to pair that with fast mana and rituals to do that. Burgi is kind of the same thing. Insane mana advantage, insane mana potential, but again, you need to be storming off in a single turn. Jeska's Will, same thing. Huge ritual spell, 3 cards impulse drawn, but you can only use those cards and that mana for a single turn. It's all about that explosive potential. Basically, all these best mono-red cards are basically like storm-style cards, combo-y adjacent cards that want to win super, super fast. But at more casual tables, again, I'm talking like brackets 1 to 3 over here, people don't want the games to end that quickly. Instead of winning by turn 4 consistently, people are aiming for experiences that go to like turn 8, turn 10, maybe even a little bit longer. In these environments, storming off as quickly as possible is kind of discouraged, which is why some of the best red cards like Underworld Breach and Jeska's Will are actually game changers. So once mono red is forced to slow down in lower bracket tables, the cracks start to appear in its game plan. Remember how I said the 2 most important things in Commander are card advantage and mana advantage? Well, once we start removing red's game changers from the equation, we're left with some pretty subpar card advantage options, though the mana advantage is still actually kind of decent. For card advantage, red is heavily reliant these days on what is called impulse draw, which it means instead of drawing a card and putting it directly into your hand and you can cast it whenever, you instead exile the cards off the top of your library, and then you can cast it until the end of this turn, or sometimes until the end of the next turn. Now, impulse draw can be very, very strong. It just depends on how pushed the individual card is, but all of them have some inherent flaws, some disadvantages to them over regular draw. Because you can only play these cards for a limited time, that means if you exile multiple lands, but you can't play all those lands at once, you're just going to lose some of the card advantage you just made with the impulse draw. Or if you exile a spell that costs too much mana, you don't have enough mana to cast it, well, that's another spell that is just gone. Or let's say you have interaction that you wanted to hold in your hand, like you had a Tybalt's Trickery or something like that. You had a counter spell and you exile that with your impulse draw and you can't use it. Well, it's just gone. So there's a lot of situations where the impulse draw ends up not actually putting you up in cards at all because you can't actually utilize those cards properly. Obviously, you can mitigate drawbacks of impulse draw by building your deck around utilizing it properly. For example, the easiest way is just lower the mana cost, average mana cost of all the cards in your deck. And also, you probably need to cut down on interaction that you would want to hold into your hand rather than interaction that you can just cast immediately. But even with all mitigation aside, it's still just going to be clunkier than straight up card draw. Now, red does have raw card draw available to it, but you have to discard your entire hand first. And these are the wheel effects. The classic Wheel of Fortune, for example, or the new card that I absolutely love, Clive, are great examples of this. Like if you have next to no cards on hand or you're empty-handed and you cast one of these wheel effects, you're up a lot of cards. It feels awesome. But again, there is a disadvantage that you do have to discard your hand first. So if you're holding on to some removal spells, if you're holding on to some protection spells, or if you're trying to sculpt a good hand to combo off, for example, then, all these wheel effects might be a serious hindrance to your overall game plan. So that's card advantage. And then mana advantage, it's actually not that bad in red. I don't know how Mana Geyser managed to not be a game changer at this point. The card is absolutely busted at casual tables, so that's a really great pickup in basically any mono red deck. There's also like Runaway Seamkin, which is like a fair Burgi in mono red decks. There's Nehem, which makes a ton of mana if you manage to do damage to your opponents regularly. Bellslinger decks get Stormkin Artist, Treasure decks and Dragon decks get Goldspan Dragon. There's a lot to love here in terms of mana options options for red decks. There's some amazing mana options for red decks. The only problem that I have with these is that there's just not enough of them. Like, there's a lot of really good ones individually, but just not enough to fully fill out all my red decks. And I think that's once we get to that point, I will not say anything bad about red in terms of mana advantage, but we're not quite there yet. So I would argue mono red's card advantage is bottom of the barrel right now, and it's not even close. The mana advantage is totally fine. I wouldn't even say it's bottom of the barrel. I would say like probably mono blue is bottom of the barrel actually. But card advantage, definitely bottom of the barrel here. So subpar card advantage is a big reason why I think mono red is the weakest mono color currently. But something that mono red sucks at way, way harder at, which is the real reason why is at bottom of the barrel for me, is actually how bad its protection / interaction / removal options are. What are red's best targeted removal options for enchantments or just big creatures that can't be lightning bolted? I think, at least according to EDH Rec, when I look at it, the only answer people can come up with is Chaos Warp, which is, by the way, a very, very good card. However, that's just one option. So good luck if you're up against like an Enchantress deck, for example, or like there's a Rhystic Study that gets played. Good luck finding your Chaos Warp in the first place and then casting it for every single pesky enchantment that comes your way. And of course, there are other options available in red. Like I know Wild Magic Surge exists, but let's face it, all those other options kind of suck. It's basically just Chaos Warp. Even the board wipes kind of suck. Like, yes, we have Blasphemous Act. Blasphemous Act, I would say, is one of the best board wipes in Commander. But then after that, it's like falling off a cliff in terms of good options, right? Like, we got Chain Reaction. That one's okay. Planetary Annihilation, I think, is kind of decent in some decks. But yeah, that's basically it. And on the other end of interaction is protecting your own stuff. And boy, howdy, is red really bad at that. Like, name a red card that is good at protecting your board against just a Wrath of God, for example. Not even like the best board wipe, just a Wrath of God, bog standard one. Well, the only decent option that I could come up with is Tybalt's Trickery, which is a very good one. But that's it. Just one. That's it. At this point, I know people are yelling at the screen at me and probably typing up comments that red actually has tons of great options for removal and protection, but they're all colorless. You just use colorless options, Tomer. Why are you being a fool? And while that is definitely true, there are certainly colorless cards that can fill the gaps that red is weak against. That's also true of every single color. This is not an exception to red. So if colorless cards are the baseline for every single color, that doesn't change the fact that red has the weakest options in terms of interaction, right? And it's not like red is uniquely suited to taking advantage of all colorless cards. Like, sure, red has some artifact commanders that can take advantage of colorless cards better than other red commanders could, but you can say the same thing about basically any color except for green. There are artifact commanders and colorless commanders for blue, black, white, all of them, just not green, and green doesn't need it. And in fact, you could argue that green is actually the best suited to utilize a lot of colorless options. For example, if mono green needs a board wipe, well, what better color is there to ramp into Big Daddy Ugin to wipe the board, or an Aldous Dust or whatever? Green is the best at doing this. So yeah, even accounting for the fact that colorless cards exist to shore up weaknesses, I think red is still by far the worst at interaction. So that's why I think red is the weakest color in casual Commander. I think red's greatest strengths are its explosive potential. Haste, storm, rituals, all these things that say go fast, win fast. But when it's forced to play at slower tables, brackets 1 to 3 again, then the weaknesses, the lack of interaction, the weaker card advantage options, the not so great mana advantage options, these start to slow it down a lot. However, I don't think mono red is going to be the weakest color forever, because I've been seeing a lot of super powerful new mono red commanders being rolled out, especially this year. For example, Clive is absolutely incredible. The front side ETBs immediately refills your hand and then some. flips over, turns into a huge fatty, punches somebody in the face, takes them out, removal, interaction that mono red is lacking too, and then mana advantage on top, and then flips back, and then draws you more cards too. And if you like start blinking him or like copying him or whatever, just so much value. It's so powerful, it feels like you're going to be playing a green deck. Or if you want to go equipments, Gilgamesh is a brand new mono red commander that provides a ton of card advantage and mana advantage. Just taking all those equipments on the top of your library and just shoving them onto the battlefield, even equipping for free, and it's an ETB and attack triggered. Wild. The RMS Titanic wasn't initially a commander, but the changes to the rules now allows it to be in the command zone. I played it on Commander Clash. It is absolutely wild how much damage and treasures you could pump out with this one. And most recently, there's Tanuk, which just allows you to cast huge fatties for 3 mana, so insane mana advantage. And then it's also card advantage because those things are warped and you get to cast them again later on. So, reuse those ETB triggers, enter the battlefield triggers, leave the battlefield triggers. It's all good stuff. So I think there's a lot of really great new commanders that are addressing Red's major weaknesses in the command zone. But I think the main thing that I want to be seeing going forward is more cards that are just easily slotted into the 99 of mono red decks as well. Give us like a second Chaos War, please. Like just giving us a little bit more variety in terms of card advantage, a little bit more protection options, something that can protect us against a board wipe in a very red way. That would be awesome. But yeah, I think we're slowly getting there. And that's also not to say that I think mono red is like super unplayable or something. Mono red is one of my favorite ways of playing Commander currently. I absolutely love it. I actually like having an underdog color because that just kind of spurs me and motivates me to start tinkering with that and trying to see if I can address the weaknesses on my own. Back when mono white was considered the weakest color, I had some of my favorite brewing sessions trying to figure out how do we eke out more card advantage? How do we eke out more mana advantage with the tools we currently have? And by doing so, I discovered really cool tech pieces like Lotus Field and Scorched Ruins, which enable your catch-up ramp cards like Knight of the White Orchid without going down in mana. And you could even use Brought Back to get back these sacrifice lands immediately to the battlefield, and then it's just like straight up ramp. You're turning Brought Back into like crazy good ramp. It's awesome. And as we keep getting more and more catch-up ramp cards, more and more brought back variants, these ramp packages just keep getting better and better. So if mono white's problems largely a thing in the past, I'm having a ton of fun trying to figure out how to eke out the most value out of mono red these days. For example, take my personal mono red deck, Inti. This commander isn't very popular, but it kind of solves the card advantage problem all by itself, turning all your looting abilities, all your cycling abilities, any sort of discarding into card advantage in the form of Impulse Draw. This deck runs basically all the best rummaging and looting effects, specifically instant speed ones like Big Score and Unexpected Windfall, so that we Impulse Draw with Inti, and then we have a full turn, our full next turn, to actually cast those cards or play those lands. Most of the cards I'm discarding are permanents, since it's a permanent heavy deck, so Brass's Tunnel Grinder is an excellent source of ramp, but also card advantage, because when it flips over, you get to attack in a free discovery on all the spells you cast with it. And it dodges Farewell when it flips over. Really nice. The deck makes a lot of treasures too, just with all its rummaging spells and whatnot. So Dowsing Device is essentially just a 2-mana rampant growth that ETBs, gives something haste, immediately flips over into a land, again, dodging board wipes, and it has a cool activated ability on top. It's just like a better rampant growth in red. And also because I discard so much, Drowned Temple is an amazing inclusion in the deck too. It's basically a 3-mana rampant growth from our graveyard. So it's even like card advantage because we didn't have to spend a card in our hand for it. Again, all these ramp options are also dodging board wipes because I know my red deck just doesn't really have answers to board wipes. Even Farewell cannot touch these ramp options once they become lands. I'm also incredibly keen on fork spells in mono red. These are very flexible, allowing you to copy your opponent's cultivate or rampant growth or whatever early game. So then you just cash that in for 2 mana and steal your opponent's superior ramp cards. That's awesome. But you can also utilize them as counter spells. If an opponent tries to counter one of your spells, for example, you can fork their counterspell, turns into a copy of the counterspell, and you counter the counterspell. And in the Inti deck, they also turn our rummaging spells into straight up card draw. For example, if we cast Big Score, hold priority, and copy it with Return the Favor, the copy spell straight up just draws us 2 cards and makes us 2 treasures. We don't have to discard a card as part of the casting cost because we're not casting a spell, we're just copying the spell. So we've essentially just drawn 2 cards, made 2 treasures at instant speed for 3 mana. Easy. Also, I'll just say it here. Return the Favor is my second favorite red card of all time. You can use it to copy your own spells, copy your opponent's spells, redirect, target a removal aimed at your own stuff at one of your opponent's stuff. So it's literally a 2-for-1 in that case. And you can also copy a spell and redirect at the same time for just 4 mana. Insane. But a lot of people overlook the fact that you can also copy activated and triggered abilities as well with this. So for example, if you crack a fetch land, like an Arid Mesa, for example, you can hold priority, cast Return the Favor to copy the trigger on Arid Mesa, and then just search up an extra land. It's yet another flexible way to land ramp in red. I've even had a game recently where an opponent tried to Swords to Plowshares one of my creatures. So in response, I activated Urza Saga's construct ability to make a construct, held priority, used Return the Favor for 4 mana to not only copy the activated ability of Urza Saga to make an additional construct, but also redirect the swords back to an opponent's creature. So in the end, I essentially protected a creature, swords one of my opponent's creatures, and made 2 constructs instead of 1. It's so good. Did I make a super long video just now to gush about a single card? Maybe. So yeah, while I do think mono red is currently the weakest mono color in Commander, it's by no means a bad color at all, nor do I think being the weakest is a bad thing. In fact, I find it very appealing, more appealing actually. If you love brewing and innovating, now is the perfect time to brew a mono red deck. Try to figure out how to address its interaction, its protection, its removal options, its card advantage options. Try to break it. And also, mono red has its own strengths even in casual. Things like haste is almost exclusive to mono red, especially mass haste. Also, like double strike is usually a red ability. Extra combats is almost exclusively a red ability too. These are really, really powerful things in casual Commander, and red has almost exclusive rights to all of them. Red is also the only color where you could find damage can't be prevented effects. And one of my favorite cards of all time is Isengard Unleashed, because it deals triple damage, damage can't be prevented, and you can kill people with commander damage through a Teferi's protection. Like, what other way can you actually do that? It's so fun. And of course, red has my favorite magic card ever, Price of Progress. Just you're mono red, you have a lot of mountains, your opponents are probably not monocolored, they have a lot of non-basics. 2 mana, they die at instant speed. I love it. Beautiful. So that's my thoughts on mono red. Why I think it's currently the weakest mono color in Commander, at least casual Commander, and why I think that will actually change over time. I think we're seeing that change in Commanders, and hopefully we'll start seeing options to address its current weaknesses in casual Commander in the 99 as well. However, I'm not the only person who has thoughts on mono red. The Trinket Mage does some amazing Commander video essays over on his channel, and he has a mono red video coming out just at the same time. We found out both of us were working on mono red videos separately, so we talked a little bit and we decided, you know what, it would be cute to roll out the videos at the same time. So I highly recommend checking out his video. He has a very different conclusion. He has a very different conclusion than I do. So if you want to see a different perspective on the mono red situation, please check it out. His channel is absolutely wonderful. So that's all I got for now, and until next time, friends, see ya!